All right, we're closing out the Structure Conference here in San Francisco. I'm here with Rich Miller. Rich, how are you?
I'm doing great, Barton.
So you are the editor-in-chief and president of Data Center Knowledge.
That's right.
And so you've come here to the Structure Conference. This is your first time, correct?
No, I've been here for all 4 years
Oh
of
my
the
gosh.
the event.
Okay, so tell me, what is your impression of this year's Structure Conference, and what are some of the key takeaways from your vantage point?
Well, what's been interesting over the course of going to Structure every year is that the discussion of cloud has shifted to potential to implementation, and this year, as the cloud models start to mature, there's a lot of interesting discussion about how the rest of the computing and infrastructure environment adapts to interest in cloud and the early success of some players in the sector. So it has everyone's attention, and I think there were some very interesting discussions and panels about how things like networking and hardware and storage adapt to the requirements that some of the largest cloud players are putting out there and what their needs are.
Yeah, I found a couple of the buzzwords that kept being bandied around were big data,
Right.
And open flow. Any thoughts on those two?
Well, I think open flow and the networking space in particular was a real good. There were some good conversations about that. There are some interesting companies that are either specifically working with the OpenFlow protocol or are more broadly looking at the idea of making the network more programmable and trying to do more. And this has been a discussion in some of the data center conferences for a while, why we don't necessarily have sort of open stacks around the networking as we have around the server side for some time, and some pretty lively conversations here in several of the panels about what the future of networking looks like and how some of the requirements for speed, for programmability, for that's an area that's ready for some disruption and some change.
Did you catch the chip panel?
Yes.
So there was someone there from C Micro, from AMD, Telera, and
Calzada.
Calzada. What's your quick takeaway from that?
Well, it's very interesting because obviously AMD, as the folks who are kind of the incumbents to some crowds where in the cloud space, people are interested in what's new. So they're in kind of an interesting position. There's a lot of interest in the sort of next generation server and chip plays. We've written quite a bit about all three of the other companies, but it's a very sort of disjointed in a way because they're all at different places. C Micro's got some products out there. They're working with Atom. They've had some nice test cases with folks like Mozilla, eHarmony. Telera is just rolling out some new chip architecture that they think will be particularly attractive to the largest cloud players. They talk about sort of co-developing with some of the biggest players in that sector, so they think that will be very attractive. Calzada is of interest to many people because they're focused on the ARM chip, which has been big in so many mobile devices, as has Atom from Intel, which C Micro is using. So it's sort of a very interesting conversation about the aspirations and some of the early successes of the new players in the chip and server sector, and at the same time, as AMD kind of left off, the notion that there's going to be some sort of sea change away from x86 anytime soon is it's optimistic, but there's an interesting evolution and a lot of interest from the largest data center players in how those products and that whole sector is going to evolve.
And then last but not least, speaking about the biggest data center players, open compute that Facebook is championing. There was a panel around that. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, open compute is interesting because the data center sector in general has been reserved about talking about the specifics of what's going inside the facilities, to the extent that folks were developing customized servers and designs They were often seen as competitive advantage. Certainly Google and Microsoft have tended to look at it. Over the past couple of years, there's been more of an opening up of the conversation as the energy issues have really, driven the need for more efficient infrastructures. So there's been much more a growing sense of openness about sharing best practices, up to a point. You talk about some good best practices that lots of folks can apply, but you don't necessarily, show what the secret sauce is. Facebook is kind of interesting because with Open Compute, they came out and they said, this isn't our core competency. We think everybody should know about this. And so they put some of these designs out. And there's been a lot of response from folks like, Rackspace and Goldman Sachs and, AMD were all participated in some of a recent event that Facebook had to try and follow up and talk about early response and early reaction to this. So it's, I think it stirred the pot quite a bit. It's raised this issue of whether more companies are going to be able to work directly with original design manufacturers, or whether there's any sort of changes in the ecosystem of how servers are built for these very large infrastructures where people are just rolling the racks in and out and even in whole containers. So Facebook has both advanced the notion that there's going to be a broader conversation and more open conversation in the data center industry, and at the same time, I think we're in the very early stages of seeing how much this is going to shake things up.
Excellent. Rich Miller, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Barton. Glad to talk to you.